A top spec Abarth 595 like this one leaves the factory in Poland with 180 bhp. But this car doesn't have 180 bhp. It doesn't have 200, not even 250. This 595 has 280 brake horsepower. Oh man! So what's it like to drive an Abarth 595 with 100 horsepower more than it was designed for? Well, in a word, very hectic. This car's had £16,000 spent on it in order to get it up to that 280 horsepower mark. It's got an aftermarket turbo, it's got a Magneti Marelli exhaust, new induction kit, KW coilovers all round. And well, the result is just about the most insane car I've ever driven. The straight line performance is just ludicrous. I mean, look, third gear now, 3,000 RPM, bit of lag, then the turbo comes and you hang on. But I've got no accuracy. I mean, the steering system, there is no feel coming through the rack about what the front tyres are up to, but it's being yanked left and right, and the car torque steers like you wouldn't believe. You need so much space either side of you if you want to open up this car. And that's really at odds with a small hot hatch like this, isn't it? The whole point is that they're small, they're easy to place, and that you can use the performance. This thing, I mean, I'm barely using half throttle, and you can see how manic it is. But I do love this gear shift. This aftermarket shifter by CAE, it's fantastic. It costs £1,000, so it should feel good, and it does. It's a really short mechanical throw. The gear lever is just a hand span away from the wheel, so you just fire through the gears. And the pedals are really well placed for heel and toe. Oh man, that is addictive. That's a great thing about this car. The pedal position and the gear change. This car has uprated brake pads and braided lines, God. And that does mean that the brake pedal feel is actually really good. It's easy to modulate, and the brakes are strong to rein in all that straight line performance. But as you can hear there, you can hear the wastegate. That's the traction control just cutting in all the time. Because as soon as you hit a bump and unload those front tyres while you're on the throttle, the thing just lights up. Oh man. You're just never inclined to tap into the performance because, well, it just overwhelms the chassis. And it's very cold today. We're on Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres and they're not getting up to temperature, so we haven't got the front end bite that we'd want. But it does hang on well if you meter out the power. But if you get on the gas a bit too hard coming out of the corner, well, number one, you get that torque steer, and number two, you just light up the front tyres. This car has a Quaife LSD in it, and to be honest, I'm still getting a lot of wheel slip, and the traction control is cutting in all the time. I mean, I've just got this light blinking at me constantly. We're on KW suspension all round. Cost the previous owner £1,000 to have it fitted. And I mean, for UK roads, it's far too firm. It's crashy at low speed. It does improve, it does flow better at high speed, but it's still far too harsh. And it does feel under damped. This is a very adjustable setup, so I'm sure you could dial up the dampers for a bit better control. But that'd make it firmer still. And I get the impression that the previous owner has slackened off the dampers for a bit of ride comfort. But what we've ended up with is a car that's far too firm for the road, but doesn't have the body control to complement that. So really, it's the worst of both worlds. And even though we've got a half cage and a strut brace in the back, the shell itself doesn't feel all that stiff. And you can feel a lot of chassis flex when you encounter a fast sequence of mid-corner bumps. And then you just couple all these things with that torque steer and the amount of performance and the turbo lag and how heavily turbocharged this thing feels. and the lack of steering feel and the lack of accuracy. Yeah, you can see what I'm getting at, can't you? This car was not meant to have 280 horsepower, and it feels it. Give me a standard Abarth any day of the week. I can imagine that car being far sweeter, still flawed, but far sweeter than this little crazy flawed touring car. It's weird, I am conflicted with this car because technically this is the worst car I've ever driven. No manufacturer would sign off a car that lacks in polish and that feels this dangerous and overwhelmed as this thing does. But at the same time, I mean, in an age where modern cars are getting so dull and so boring, they're the cookie cutter recipe, they all feel so similar. This thing is like nothing else. I'm always busy. I've got this lovely gear shift. I'm fighting the car. In this respect, it's a lot like the Alfa Romeo 4C. And it's a flawed machine, there's no question. Technically, it falls far short of cars like the GR Yaris and the Fiesta ST. But your heart rate in this thing is going to be far higher than if you were driving one of those. It's exciting. But I want to get out and I want to get back in my Panda 100 HP.